Welcome back to the Funding Blueprint, the podcast where we break down what it really takes to build, fund, and scale a startup today. I'm your host, Cece Nahaman, and in today's episode, we're diving into the real engine behind sustainable business growth, strategy and business development. Not the buzzwords, the actual frameworks, decisions, and actions that drive results. To help us unpack it all, I'm joined by Antonia Berry, founder of Strategy Academy and a seasoned legal business development strategist with nearly 20 years of experience guiding firms across the globe. While her roots are in the legal world, Antonia's insights on strategic development apply to any founder serious about long-term growth. She's worked with everyone from solo attorneys to major international firms, helping them craft custom strategies that align with their unique goals, stand out in competitive markets, and actually generate measurable results. Today, we're exploring what business development really looks like in practice, how strategy becomes execution, and why a thoughtful, tailored approach is the key to standing the test of time. Let's get into it. Antonia, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Of course, we're so excited to have you. So let's kind of just jump right into it. Let's start with some definitions because these terms often get thrown around a lot. So in your words, in your opinion, what's the real key difference between business development and strategic development?
Sure. So yes, and you are correct that a lot of times the lines can be very blurred in defining one from the other and kind of knowing what is different about them. So obviously in any business, there's business development. So those are your activities that you're going to do and you want to do to develop the business, to expand the business. These could be very generic things that you do to move the needle on how that business grows and develops, right? So that's more of a, we're developing the business, blanketed definition of business development. And that's applicable to, of course, any industry. Now, when you're looking at strategic business development, that is a little bit more refined and it drills down a little bit deeper than just developing the business. Strategic development requires you to be exactly that, strategic. So you're looking at very specific things that make up what your business is going to be targeting, what your business is going to go after. And also, there's a very defined and specific goal that you're trying to get to. So essentially in the strategic business development space, what is happening is you've put down the roots of where you want to be. You're now very much aware of where you are. And in the middle is where you're doing the work to get to the goal. And that middle piece is what strategic business development is. It is being very intentional about what you do, knowing exactly what you're going after, where are these clients, where is the business, and how are you going to get there. From there, you're going to put down very specific action items that you're going to take, whether that's going to be every day, every week, every month, quarter, whatever that is, and whatever that means for you in order for you to get the goal. Of course, in strategic business development, you can't say that's going to take me, a month or a year and know for sure. However, this is you saying, here's the goal, here's what I'm working towards. And of course, you can course correct as things change. Things changing, meaning your environment, the market, perhaps something happens with the segment by which you're looking after or you're wanting to go after, whatever it is that changes that would require you to course correct. And this comes into play when you're doing strategic type work because you're looking at all the things that could impact, what you're doing could impact your plan, could impact your outcome, and being strategic about the way that you respond to those different things that perhaps could happen along the journey to getting to the goal.
Yeah, definitely. Once that distinction, between business development and strategic development is clear, the next challenge is truly knowing where to begin. You've helped firms across industries craft development strategies tailored to their goals. So my next question is, what's the first thing that you look at when building a business development plan? And kind of building on that, how can a startup founder begin to think more strategically from day one?
So one of the first things that we're going to look at is where are we right now as a business, whether that's you start getting started or just getting started, or if you've been in the business for some time and perhaps you want to change direction or change market from where you're at and where you have been kind of doing things, whatever the case is, right? You're going to look at where you're at. Where am I right now and where do I want to be? Because you need to be able to navigate the ship, right? This is what you're doing. You're basically steering the ship to get to the destination that you have essentially said that you want to be at. Once you've nailed that down as your first step, as your first thing to do, then you're going to have a much better idea of what needs to be the in between, in terms of, where do I need to look, who do I need to be talking to, and all that kinds of stuff. After you've done that initial, like, defining where you are and where you want to be, the next thing to do is to look within your circle, look within your space to see who you're connected to that perhaps can help you get to where you're needing to get to. Now, if you look within your space and you don't have any contacts that can help you get to where you need to be, this is where you need to now start compiling who are these people and where do I find them and how do I start connecting to them. I've had clients before that have started completely at ground zero and knowing that they want to go in one specific direction. However, they have no contacts, they have no relationships in that space. But that doesn't mean that you can't find those individuals and that you can't connect with them. Everybody starts somewhere. So in finding out who these people are and where they are, the next step is figuring out how do you immerse yourself within this group of individuals to move the needle on, where you want to move the ship to, what direction you want to move the ship to. I've personally found that relationships existing as well as creating new ones is what really propels business forward, is what really helps you when you're doing strategic work, because those relationships are organic in a way that then evolves into business. So I like to say, before you start thinking that you're going to move straight into cold calling, try to warm those relationships up a little bit from being completely cold to moving them into a place of warmness. And that could be, like I said, with clients, people or contacts that you already know, or they could be with contacts that you need to know. But warming the relationship up from cold to warm and then transitioning those relationships into business relationships are a really, really good, nifty way of moving from, here's where I am to where I want to be, because they can connect you to people perhaps, and then they'll probably even want to do business with you as well.
Yeah, definitely. Can you share any tips or tricks on how to shift from those cold contacts to warming them up a little bit? What are some things that you've done or you've seen that you think help those relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've done in throughout my entire career, because business development for the larger part of it does include some sales, and I can say that just knowing where I want to be, and this is something that I have personally done for my business. So I'm speaking from experience and not so much from theory. When I decided that, there was a, very carved out type of client that I, want to be serving, I started to look at, who are these people? Where are they? How do I get to them? So for example, I focus primarily on attorneys. So I had to find out who they are. One way to find out who attorneys are is to go to the local state bar. And this information is made available to you. It's public information. Figure out who these people are. Where are they? How do you get to them? How do you connect with them, right? And it could be strictly through the Georgia State Bar, or it could be through organizations that they're a part of. So it's going to take some research. It's going to take some digging. And what my assistant sometimes calls a little bit of stalking, right? Because you got to figure out who are these people, where are they, who are they connected to, and all that other kind of stuff. So I did some digging like that, and with my assistant's help, in understanding, okay, this particular individual or firm fits the profile of what we want our entire clientele to look like, right? So we figured out who they are that fit within that group. Once we figured out who they are, and this is us making a list, right? I mean, being very like hands-on, making a list of the firm names, and then looking at who's at that, who are the individuals at these firms. From there, we move it to the next step. Who do we know that's there? Or who do we know that perhaps knows somebody from there? In doing that exercise, we then asked for the individuals that were connected to these attorneys to give us introductions, right? To help us get introduced to these individuals. We found that that approach was a lot more, acceptable, and it just went across the table much better when I'm trying to do business with someone, because I was introduced to them by a mutual contact, right? So now the relationship is no longer cold, it's a little bit warm, right? And I oftentimes like to remind people that LinkedIn is a very, very powerful tool for this, because you can go behind the scenes. You can actually, there's a tool called LinkedIn Sales Navigator that we use to dig behind the scenes to see who these individuals are, and we can actually map out who they are, who do they know, do we know them, and then we can reach out to individuals through LinkedIn sometimes, and then getting introductions that way, or just being cold. Sometimes just being a cold contact and reaching out and providing something helpful to the individual. Maybe it's an article or a blog, a podcast, something that is going to resonate with them. And that tends to warm up the relationship as well, from being completely cold into a little bit more of a warmer space, and you're connecting. Now, another tool that I've used is the local chamber of commerce. In my area, there's a local chamber of commerce here. I joined the local chamber of commerce and right away got access to the directory of members. Once I became a member, started reaching out to those individuals to connect, introducing myself, telling them about what my business does, and offering ways to help them. Another way of warming up relationships is offering something of value that doesn't cost the potential client anything. And that way that individual feels like, wow, like this person was thoughtful enough to send me something that can actually help me and help my business. And there are no strings attached, right? Because it's not salesy. It doesn't feel yucky to that individual. So, there are a number of strategies that can be used to warm up relationships, but those are a couple that I use and I recommend to my clients as well. And another thing that I'll mention here is that I've gone through a sales training recently here in the Atlanta, Georgia area. There is a gentleman, his name is Mr. Mo Banel. He offers a remarkable sales training that I attended over 2.5, almost 3 days. He also has a couple of books. He has a YouTube channel, website, and he's always sending out useful information. I would recommend anybody who wants to learn how to do business development and be strategic about it to start following him and use some of his tips to figure out how do you go from being a cold contact to a warm contact, and then using those strategies to build out or strategically build out your business that way.
Yeah, that's great and extremely helpful and insightful. Kind of shifting a little bit here, another theme I feel like that comes up often in strategy is focus and knowing what not to do. And, strategic development can also mean knowing what not to do and knowing what to do. So,
Correct.
how do you help businesses narrow their focus and say no to those distractions and, simultaneously build strategies that align with their actual strengths and market position?
Well, the number one thing that I found that just kind of misaligns our clients from like the direction that they're heading in, is usually falling into a rabbit hole, right? So that's a shiny little object comes along and it looks like the way to go, the thing to run after. And they start chasing it. And then now they're 10 miles away from where they're supposed to be, right? So I have regular check-ins with clients for this reason, because I always want to know, what are you doing? What are you focusing on? And, you know, what do we need to do to keep you on track or get you back on track?
Yeah.
So that is one way. Having an accountability person, or saying no to an accountability person, whether it's going to be like a coach or it's going to be just an individual that you're working with, saying no to that is something I object to. That is a don't do that. Don't say no to somebody who can keep you in line and hold you accountable. Now that's, and then on the back of that, saying don't chase every like silver object that shows up and then sends you down a rabbit hole, right? There are things that you're going to have to be disciplined about, and saying that I'm not going to do that because it's going to take me away from what I'm really supposed to be doing. So not chasing the silver object is, I would say, number two. The third thing is, I do have clients that absolutely hate writing down their strategic plan, because they feel it's a complete waste of time. One way to keep on track is to write down what it is that's happening, have it on paper, have it ready, have it available, and then revisiting it, right? So one no is tucking away your plan somewhere and never reading it, never reviewing it, never making sure you're not going back to it then, right?
Yeah.
On a regular basis. That's one way of that's a no of business development and strategic business development, right? Is not visiting the plan, revisiting the plan. Now, of course, one don't do is don't get locked in to what you're doing so tightly that you're not willing to change if things change, right? Because you have to be able to adapt, you have to be versatile, you have to be able to, you know, course correct if you need to. Life happens, business happens, just generally things happen. So do not be, I want to say, stiff, and completely shut away from, you know, things changing. So accepting change would have to be something that you say yes to. So I would say that those are perhaps like the highlight items that any business owner will need to keep in mind in knowing that you are in uncharted territories, regardless of how long you think you've been in it. Things are rapidly changing, always changing, and you have to be open to it, knowing that, you know, at any point, things can just go in a different way.
Yeah, totally. And you know, those early stage teams especially kind of feel like they're constantly in that like firefighting mode. You know, they're always having to balance and try to keep growing, but meanwhile, you know, manage that initial foundation. So that kind of brings me to my next point that you started to touch upon a little. What would your advice be to founders who feel stuck in that reactive mode to the constantly changing landscape of starting your own business? And how do you start building a foundation while also managing the chaos of a growing business?
I think the first thing to do is to stop. You need to stop for a minute, and you need to really recalibrate. If you are finding that, you know, you feel like you're spinning, is kind of spinning in a circle, it's time to stop, at a minimum pause, because you need to reassess where you're at and where you're going and how you're going to get there. In most situations where, you know, a business owner is like going left, right, and they're like, hey, I don't really know what's going on, I'm going all over the place, is usually because they have not revisited the strategic development plan. They have not gone back to it as frequently as they need to. I personally go back to mine every week, just to see where I am and where I'm going, to get refreshed in, okay, this happened this past week. What do I need to do this week to move ahead of where I was the week before? So like that moment of pausing that I do each week allows me to reflect. It allows me to course correct. It allows me to generate what is the next strategic move that I need to make in my business, right? So when a business owner is finding themselves kind of falling away from their original plan or the plan or perhaps lane that they should be on, one thing to do is to go back to the strategic plan. What does the strategic plan say should be happening and they should be doing? Like I mentioned before, I'm a firm believer in having this plan written and not just something that you have memorized in your head. If it is written somewhere, that way you can go back to it, you can revisit it, you can see this is where I'm at, and this is where I need to be going. So you can get back to, where you were. Perhaps you might have lost your way for whatever reason or for however length of time. But you can now go back to the strategic plan and you can almost like get back on the bicycle and start riding again because you've, fallen off for whatever reason, right? So in order for a business owner to not be reactive in chasing the silver shiny item, having the plan, the strategic plan that they're going back to is the way. It is the number one way. Of course, like I also mentioned before, you have a business coach or you have somebody that can hold you accountable. That's great too. However, not every business owner has access to that particular resource. So most times they have to course correct on their own. They have to self-motivate. They have to hold themselves accountable. But having that strategic plan that tells you right in front of your face in black and white whether or not you're being successful or even if you're following what the plan said or what you said that you're supposed to do, that's a reality check, right? It's staring you in the face and saying, hey, you didn't follow through on what you said you were going to do. So that then moves you from being, in this reactive space to resetting and getting back into the proactive space that you're meant to be in. Because obviously if you wrote the strategic development plan, you know what needs to be done and you wrote it down. So now backtracking to that and then getting back on course allows the business owner to go from being this reactive person that's reacting every single day to something that they're, just come out that they're chasing, to instead getting on the path that they were on before. Of course, in every single business, because of just the nature of business, things move rapidly. Sometimes you fall off course, not even realizing, right? Something might show up, a new business opportunity that happens to be, lucrative. Okay, that's great. Perhaps you can add that to what you're doing, but you need to go back to the strategic plan anyway, because now you need to add that to it if you want to add that to your business. And you need to be able to come up with a plan to sustain whatever that is that you're now after, that you're now working with, that you've now brought into your business, and determine whether or not you're going to keep what you were working on previously, or do you now need to take something away that perhaps is not performing and is eating away at your resources and not giving you the return on investment that you need in order for you to be profitable, right? So this is a business owner being proactive, being strategic, being mindful and being present in their business and not just working, in the business, but instead working on the business. And I think those two things oftentimes get mismatched, where somebody who is, working in your business, actually you're performing and acting as if you're an employee, when instead you're supposed to be the business owner, you're supposed to be the CEO. And your role is to run the business, to make sure that the business is moving, but not necessarily being the quote unquote technician or specialist. Those are people that you hire and that you empower as a business owner to carry out the tasks that need to be done every day to keep you in business, but your job is not to do those things, right? And I think if a business owner can take a step away from being the technician, from being the worker, from being the employee, this will help them to really understand and move into being a business owner as opposed to a business doer / employee of the business.
Yeah, definitely. To kind of wrap things up here, I guess, you've worked with leaders in high stakes and competitive industries such as law. So, are there any lessons or frameworks from that world that you think startup founders of any industry and growth stage teams could benefit from applying in their own strategic planning and development?
I would say that being open to learning from anything and anyone is the number one thing to note to self. I can tell you in my business that my kids that are now teenagers have played a very integral role in some of the big decisions that I've made in my business. And the reason why I say that is because the individuals that are teenagers right now are going to be the future, right? They're very much locked into technology. They're very much locked into the know of what's happening now. They're very current, right? And sometimes saying something to someone who's not within your generation or perhaps even not in your industry can be very beneficial because they're giving you a response that's not coming from you. It's not your thoughts or somebody who is just, vested or invested in what it is that you do. So it's a clear perspective that you're getting that, can give you ideas about things that you probably didn't even think about, right? So having an open mind and understanding that you can learn things and you can get ideas from some of the most unbelievable places and individuals that you might not have assumed would be able to help you. So having an open mind and asking questions and being curious. Oh my goodness, being curious is something I feel that business owners do not do enough of. Just being curious and knowing more about things that perhaps might not even relate to your industry or relate to your business, because it sparks creativity, it sparks ideas, and it helps you to be innovative. I can say, like I mentioned before, my kids, and asking them things or just saying things in their presence have, helped me come up with some brilliant ideas, have even helped me to learn some things that I didn't know and things that I didn't consider for my business. For example, I can give you one. I oftentimes thought that, having a YouTube channel was, not for me and not for my business, because I was thinking, like, who is going to watch my videos and what are they going to get out of it? Until my daughter said, Mom, like, people have become lazier, right? And they want to just be talked to instead of having to read the information that you're putting out there. And when I now do the comparison, from the audience of my videos, as opposed to like the posts that I do on social media and the stuff that I push out on my website, as well as my newsletter, the most views come from those videos. And I learned that from my daughter, who was able to say to me, hey, this is what people are doing most of the time. They're watching videos, and then once they learn about you, they start following you, and they start going down this like path of wanting to know and absorb every single thing that you put out there on a video or on videos. So, I just feel like, being curious, like I said, and, being open to learning things from some of the most unassuming sources is probably one of the biggest tips that I can give a business owner in terms of how they develop the business, how they move forward, how they're able to be innovative and think outside the box. And I think lastly, one of the most important things as well is knowing that your next business deal most times is usually just beyond your comfort zone, right? I tell the attorneys that I work with that all the time. Just go outside of your comfort zone just a little bit, and you would be surprised what you find. You might very well find that wow, out here is not as scary as I thought it would be. It's outside of my comfort zone, yes, but it's not as scary. And wow, look how many more opportunities there are out here. So I would say, think about being fearless in your approach, and that will uncover lots of things for you as a business owner.
Yeah, I love that. I'm sure our listeners will definitely take that piece of advice to heart. But unfortunately, that is a wrap on today's conversation. And seriously, what a masterclass in business and strategic development. From cutting through the noise to building custom growth plans that actually work. Antonia, you reminded us that real strategy isn't just about theory, it's about alignment, clarity, and execution. So, whether you're a startup founder navigating early traction or scaling a business rethinking your market position, this episode was packed with tangible insights on how to build smarter and more resilient companies. So, thank you so much, Antonia. And listeners, if you would like to learn more about her work or explore how Strategy Academy supports leaders in high stakes industries, be sure to check out her work at Strategy Academy. And thank you again for tuning into the Funding Blueprint, the show where we really break down what it takes to build, fund, and grow a business today. Thank you again so much, Antonia, and I'll see you guys next time.
Bye now. Thank you.